archenemy of Islam, once addressed some of his accomplices or people of Quraysh. It seems that Muhammad is determined to go on finding fault with our religion, degrading our forefathers, discrediting our way of life, and abusing our gods. I bear witness to our God that I will carry a too heavy rock and drop it on Muhammad's head while he is in prostration to rid you of him once and for all. I am not afraid of whatever is said Banu might do. The terrible unfortunate audience endorsed his plan and encouraged him to translate it into a decisive deed. In the morning of the following day, Abu Jahl lay waiting for the arrival of the Messenger of Allah to offer prayer. The people of Quraysh were in their assembly rooms waiting for news. When the Prophet prostrated himself, Abu Jahl proceeded carrying the big rock to fulfill his wicked intention. No sooner had he approached closer to the Prophet than he withdrew pale-faced, shuddering, with his hands strained, the rock falling off. Thereupon the people watching hurried forward, asking him what the matter was. He replied, "When I approached a male camel, unusual in figure, with a fearful canines, intercepted and almost devoured me." Ibn Isaac reported that the Prophet, in the context of his comment on the incident, said it was Gabriel. If Abu Jahl had approached closer, he would have killed him. Even so, the tyrants of Quraysh would not be admonished. Contrariwise, the idea of killing the Prophet was still being nourished in their iniquitous hearts. On the authority of Abdul, some people of Quraysh were in a place called Al-Hijr complaining that they had been too patient with the Prophet, who suddenly appeared and began his usual circumambulation. They started to wink at him and utter sarcastic remarks, but he remained silent for 2 times. Then on the third, he stopped and addressed the infidel, saying, "O people of Quraysh, hearken, I swear by Allah, in whose hand is my soul, that you will one day be slaughtered to pieces." As soon as the Prophet uttered his word of slaughter, they all stood aghast and switched off to a new style of language, smacking of fear and even horror, trying to soothe his anger and comfort him, saying, "You can leave Abu Qasim, for you have never been foolish." I asked Abdullah to tell me of the worst thing that the pagans did to the Prophet. He said, while the Prophet was praying in Al-Hijr of Al-Kaaba, came and put his garment around the Prophet's neck and throttled him violently. Abu Bakr came and caught him by his shoulder and pushed him away from the Prophet and said, "Do you want to kill a man just because he says, 'My Lord is Allah'?" The conversion of Hamza bin Abdul Muttalib in a gloomy atmosphere infested with dark clouds of iniquity and tyranny, there shone on the horizon and promising light for the oppressed. The conversion of Hamza bin Abdul Muttalib in Dhul Hijjah, the 6th year of prophethood. It is recorded that the Prophet was one day seated on the hillock of Safa when Abu Jahl happened to pass by and accused the religion preached by him. Muhammad, however, kept silent and did not utter a single word. Abu Jahl went on unchecked, took a stone and cracked the Prophet's neck, which began to bleed. The aggressor then went to join the Qurayshites in their assembly place. It so happened that shortly after that Hamza, while returning from a hunting expedition, passed by the same way. His bow hanging by his shoulder, a slave girl belonging to Abdullah bin Jadam, who had noted the impertinence of Abu Jahl, told him the whole story of the attack on the Prophet. And on hearing that, Hamza was deeply offended and hurried to Al-Kaaba, and there in the courtyard of the holy sanctuary found Abu Jahl sitting with a company of Qurayshites. Hamza rushed upon him and struck his bow upon his head violently and said, "Ah, you have been abusing Muhammad. I too follow his religion and profess what he preaches." The men of Bani Makhzum came to his help, and men of Banu Hashim wanted to render help. But Abu Jahl sent them away, saying, "Let Abu Umara alone by Allah. I did revile his nephew shamelessly. In fact, Hamza's conversion derived initially from the pride of a man who would not accept the notion of others humiliating his relative. Later on, however, Allah purified his nature and he managed to grasp the most trustworthy handhold. Faith in Allah. He proved to be a source of great strength to the Islamic faith and its followers. The conversion of Umar bin al-Khattab, another significant addition to the strength of Islam, was the conversion of Umar bin al-Khattab in Dhul Hijjah, the 6th year of prophethood, 3 days following the conversion of Hamza. He was a man of dauntless courage and resolution, feared and respected in Mecca and hitherto a bitter opponent of the new religion. The traditional account reveals that the Prophet once raised his hands in prayer and said, "O Allah, give strength to Islam, especially through either of two men. You love more Umar bin al-Khattab or Abu Jahl bin Hisham." Umar obviously was the one who merited that privilege. When we scrutinize the several versions that speak of Umar's conversion, we can safely conclude that various contradictory emotions used to conflict with one another within his soul. On the one hand, he used to highly regard the traditions of his people and was habituated to the practice of indulgence in wine orgies. On the other hand, he greatly admired the stamina of the Muslims and their relentless dedication to their faith. These two extreme views created a sort of skepticism in his mind and made him at times tend to believe that the doctrines of Islam could bear better and more sacred seeds of life. That is why he would always experience fits of outrage directly followed by unexpected enervation. On the whole, the account of his conversion is very interesting and requires us to go into some details. One day, Umar bin al-Khattab set out from his house and headed for the holy sanctuary, where he saw the Prophet offering prayer and overheard him reciting the Surah Al-Haqqa. The reality of the noble Quran. The words of Allah appealed to him and touched the innermost cells of his heart. He felt that they derived from unusual composition, and he began to question his people's allegations. As regards the man composed poetry of words of a soothsayer that they used to attach the noble Quran, the Prophet went on to recite that this is verily the word of an honoured messenger, Gabriel or Muhammad, which he has brought from Allah. It is not the word of a poet. Little is that you believe, nor is it the word of a soothsayer or a foreteller. Little is that you remember. This is the revelation sent down from the Lord of the Alamin, mankind, jinns, and all that exists. All at that very moment Islam permeated his heart. However, the dark layer of pre-Islamic tendencies, the deep-seated traditional bigotry, as well as the blind pride in his forefathers, overshadowed the essence of the great truth that began to feel its way reluctantly into his heart. He therefore persisted in his atrocities against Islam and its adherents, unmindful of the pure and true to man's nature feeling that they lay behind that fragile cover of pre-Islamic ignorance and mentality. His sharp temper and excessive enmity towards the Prophet led him one day to leave his house, sword in his hand, with the intention of killing the Prophet. He was in a fit of anger and was fretting and fuming, knowing. A friend of Umar's met him accidentally halfway. What had caused so much excitement in him, and on what was the fury to burst? He inquired casually. Umar said furiously, "To destroy the man Muhammad." This